Afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Studio Live Today and the live recording of the second episode of the Studio Live Today podcast. My name is Pete Johns. If it's your first time here, this channel is all about helping you create, record, and release your best music in the home studio, the mobile studio, whether you're using your phone or your tablet or your Mac or your PC. It really doesn't matter. This is, as I mentioned, the live recording of the podcast. You can go to studiolivetoday.com/podcast if you want to subscribe to the podcast and make sure that you get it in your podcast player of choice at the convenience of it popping in there once every week. And you can even play it there on the web page. So if you missed the first episode, there it is, Why I Will Never Use a PC Again. I'm surprised that I didn't get more flack for that because it was a little bit clickbaity. But yes, never use a PC again, question mark. So that was the first episode. And if you want to catch up on that one, you can do so over there. Now, what we do, this isn't the podcast yet. You are getting to see the behind the scenes. I'm peeling back the curtain and you're getting to see what we do before and after, because this is what eventually I probably won't do this live on the channel every week. But while I'm learning, I want your help. I want to get the support of this community to help me with the podcast, because you can help make sure that the audio comes through okay. You can give me topics and suggestions and ideas. You can ask questions. Yes, you can. You can put a Q in front of any comment and you can ask any questions that may be burning a hole in your brain going, Johns, I just don't know how to do X, Y, or Z. So please go ahead and do that. We will dive in and actually start the recording in around about 10 or 15 minutes. So if you're watching on the replay, there'll be a timestamp down in the description and pinned down there, and you can jump straight there and check out the podcast itself. What are we talking about today? Well, what we normally do is we talk on the podcast about what's happened in the last week on Studio Live Today. So I go through some of the previous videos and things. Our feature topic for this week's podcast is going to be a bit of a fun one. And to give you an idea of what we're talking about, I'm going to hold up this. There you go. That's a hint for what we're talking about. We're going to talk about music formats and nostalgia for music formats. Are cassettes and vinyl records and things actually as good as our brain remembers? And should they make comebacks? Will they make comebacks? Are they already? Do you still spin vinyl on the daily? Well, we'll talk about all of that in the podcast episode today. We'll do a little bit of talking about CES and what's gone on over there. I'm going to talk about EQ, why it's simpler than a lot of people think, and Apple with their AI narration of their iBooks. If you haven't checked this out, it's pretty cool. We're going to show you that when we get to the actual podcast. I'm going to talk about scams, music scams, and one that I got this week that I'm going to talk about in particular, because these are super common. They're preying on you. They're preying on music creators, and it's kind of shite. And we don't like that at all. And we've got your questions as well. And then we'll talk about what's coming up in the next week on Studio Live Today. Should we say g'day? Hello. Let's say g'day to all the folks who are here live in the live studio audience. Hello to S.M. Borthwick. Hey to Tremor Bear. Hey to Thomas Christ. Oh, Christ has a new logo by the looks of it. I like the look of that one. Good stuff. Hey, Fat Panda Cat. Hope you're doing well. Audio sounds great. Excellent. Well, that's, again, see, this is why we have pros like Scott here in the crowd to help us. Petopolis. Yeah, did you catch did you catch Folk Punk and his interview over with Jade Starr? That's probably just wound up or is close to. I had to jump out towards the end there because I had to come and set up for this one. G'day Axioms Underground. Who haven't I said hello to? Joe and Barry. Glenn, g'day to you. G'day to Vidal and the Shadowy Figures. We've got Frank Terzo. We've got Dan Ekberg, Music Manny, aka the Lily Pillies. We've got Raymond McGurk up there in Northern Ireland. Thank you for being here. And who did I miss? Mr. Back from Doing Time. Hello to you. So I hope you are all doing exceptionally well wherever you are in the world and whatever you're planning to do. You've got a big weekend coming up? I don't. I mean, I always do. I always have a big weekend because I'm always in this here studio doing these here live shows on Studio Live Today. So the way my schedule works, yes, we do say schedule here in Australia. The way my schedule works is that Friday morning is this now. It used to be Home Studio Q&A, then it used to be the Creator Town Hall, and now we're doing this show, which is always a lot of fun. I then have sort of Saturday off. I normally put out a video, and guess what? That's now going to be the podcast release. So once this one's done, I edit it together, and then I put out the podcast Saturday morning. So that's Friday afternoon for folks. I know, it's time zones. It's weird. We then do the happy hour, and this week I'm rocking some ballads. Maybe I need to play some heart tunes. How will I get you alone? Not a bad idea, actually. Although this one's, I don't want to need you. Oh, this is their other song. I can't even remember how that one goes. I don't want to need you. Is that one? I just want to love you. That one there. All right. We'll talk about that a bit later. Then we've, of course, got Your Music Live, which kicks off Monday morning or Sunday afternoon for you folks. And then we finish the weekend on Monday or Tuesday with the GarageBand Weekly, which there's a lot going on in the world of GarageBand at the moment. So we've had a few videos. We'll talk about that. Actually, I've got to get set up for that now. We'll talk about what's been happening in the world of GarageBand because they snuck out some new stuff, which is a bit weird. So there was some brand new updates to their plugins that they did not publicize in the slightest, but we found on a recent show. So if you've missed those, then they are over here on the channel. If we'll just jump you over there in 1 second. Oh, my mouse is misbehaving. Don't misbehave, mouse. And yeah, I've got to accept the new YouTube terms and conditions. You know what that is? That's the new Shorts Fund. I don't have that in the rundown, but should I put that in the podcast? Yeah, let's put that in the podcast because one more topic can't hurt. YouTube Shorts monetization. So hang around because I'll talk about that in a minute because it's interesting stuff. But yeah, so we had a couple of, oh, look at that one, 1,500 exactly views. But GarageBand's new free plugins are actually pretty cool. You can see there from the these have all changed. Turn that down a bit. But yeah, so the distortion plugin, the band EQ plugin, the delay plugin, they've all got like these amazing new, look at the delay. The delay's now got this visualizer so you can actually see what's going on there. So there's been some unexpected changes to GarageBand, which is a little bit weird, but we'll go with it. It's bizarre that that Apple go out of their way to publicize when they have some rando producer that no one's heard of, and they've added a new pack, yet they update some of their most fundamental plugins like, oh, I don't know, a decent parametric EQ, and it's crickets. So instead of crickets, I'm going to be shouting it from the rooftop myself. All right, I'm going to have a little beverage. Got to have coffee to keep me going. G'day, Punkster P. I hope you are well. Who have I not said good day to? We've got Punkster P and Peter. Hey, Peter. I have not seen Peter in a very long time. Happy New Year to you, Peter. I hope you are well. All right. So yes, let's get. I'll get my what's been going on the channel details up here so we can talk about that. Righty. And coming up on Studio Live today, which we have, by the way, if you're not on the mailing list, you probably should be. I've just put out the latest mailing list newsletter. So if you want to make sure that you get onto that one, it is this one here, Studio Live Weekly, edition 174. Yeah, we've been doing this for a very long time. So you can jump in there and you can make sure that you subscribe to that one. So studiolivetoday.com/email will make sure that you're on the mailing list and that you can check out everything that's going on. And of course, you can become a patron as well, studiolivetoday.com/Patreon. There you go. There's Thomas Christ telling us what needs to go. I need to move some things here because I think I'm blocking. Because if you've used a Mac, especially the Mac Mini, it's kind of dodgy. I'm just going to get my water set up here. It's kind of dodgy because the Bluetooth and the USB, for whatever reason, seems to not be very strong. And because my Mac Mini is the other side of my desk, I often have problems where the mouse will just stop communicating. It will go all jittery. And when you're doing a live stream, you really don't want that. I know Thomas Christ knows what I'm talking about because I think you've had the same sort of issues, mate, with the Mac and the dodginess of the USB. When you're using a USB dongle for a mouse or even Bluetooth, it's not quite right. It's a bit dodgy. Yeah, I know, the Casingle. How good was the Casingle? We'll talk about the Casingle as we go through. Hands up who bought a Casingle back in the day. Yeah, it was designed for poor students who couldn't afford the whole album. And let's be honest, back in the day, if you bought the whole album that had like 12 tracks on it, what, 2 were good, 3 if you were lucky and had a really good album. So you just bought the single, and then you got the wacky B-side. Anyway, we'll talk about it later. It's very, very cool. Yeah, Dan Ekberg's on board. He bought some singles. Thomas says he uses a wide mouse. Yeah, I'm so close to just switching to a wide mouse because it's a train wreck sometimes using the wireless mouse. G'day Ed Z. Thank you for being here. All right, we're getting ready. I said we'll start around about 10 minutes in, so we'll just make sure that we're fully caffeinated. Don't forget, if you want to confuse your family, friends, and co-workers, Studio Live Today merch, you can grab yourself your own mug. They're only about $15 over at studiolivetoday.com/merch. All righty, I think we're ready to rock and roll. When we record the podcast, I'm not as interactive, but I am keeping an eye on there. So if you've got comments about the things we're talking about, please throw them in there as we go. I'll ask for them and invite them. And if you do have questions, we will have a question time segment. I've actually only got one question. Everyone's been a bit silent of late, so I've only got one question in the vault here. So it could be a very quick question time segment today. But if you do have questions, just put a big fatty old Q in front of your comment, and I'll assume it is a question. Hey, Michael Thompson, hello to you and all of the shadow lurkers. We're watching you. You may think we're not, but we are. Oh, no, wait, you're watching us. Same thing. All righty, so what are we at? We're at the 11-minute mark at about 11:30. We're going to, actually, you know what I need to do? It'll be about 12 now, because I need to grab the theme music. So I use my song called There's No Such Thing as College. Don't worry, we will get a little bit more slick with this stuff in the future, but I'm just making sure that this is ready to go. This is why I usually subject my patrons. So that's the thing. You pay me to be a patron of the channel, and your reward is that you get to watch all this behind-the-scenes nonsense. But yeah, we're making it public for these first few podcasts at least, so you can see all the things you could enjoy if you decided to become a member of the Patreon. All right, let's get set up. We're at the 12-minute mark, so we are going to start the show proper. I'll see you. I'll hang around on the other side too, folks. So hang around at the end. If you have any final comments or questions, we'll have a chat then. But for now, the podcast, episode 2. Let's do it. Yes, it is the Studio Live Today podcast here on Studio Live Today. My name is Pete Johns. If it's your first time here, Studio Live Today is all about helping you create, record, and release your best music. Whether you're using your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac, your PC, any device at all, if you want the tips and the tricks and the community and the support to help you get your best music out there, you've come to the right place. This is episode 2 of our podcast, and on today's show, we've got a whole bunch of cool stuff. The main topic is going to be all about music formats. Yeah, we're going to go into the nostalgia of your vinyls, of your cassettes, of your CDs. Music streaming. Is streaming nostalgic yet? I don't know. We've got to be close, don't we? We're also going to talk EQ. We're going to talk about CES that just happened. We are here in January 2023, so it is CES season. AI and AI narration for audiobooks. Is it good enough? We'll find out. We'll take a bit of a listen to that. We're going to talk about vanity metrics and scams. You know those scammers that want to give you free Instagram? Oh, I'll give you 1,000 Instagram followers. I'll give you 1,000 YouTube subscribers. Yeah, they're scammers. And we're going to tell you how to identify them and how to avoid them and a whole lot more. Maybe even a bucket of fish. We'll see how we go. If you want to subscribe, all you need to do is go to your podcatcher, your podcast player of choice, and just search Studio Live Today. That's 3 words, exactly as it sounds. Or, of course, you can go to the website, studiolivetoday.com/podcast, and all the information you need will be there to subscribe. We also do a live video show, so shout out to the folks who are watching me record this live on the YouTube channel. You folks are indeed awesome, and you can go to studiolivetoday.com to catch up with all the videos, all the tips, the tutorials, and the live shows that we have here on the channel. Phew! That was a lot, and we're only like 1 minute into the podcast. But let's jump in and do what we do at the start of every show, which is look at the last week in Studio Live Today. So the biggest thing from last week is that we had some new GarageBand plugins. Or we didn't really have new GarageBand plugins. We had updated GarageBand plugins. So a lot of the videos that I did in the last week were kind of around that, because we did the GarageBand weekly show that we do every week. And on that show, I went in and looked at all of called the free Apple AUV3 plugins. So these are the external plugins that you can actually add to GarageBand or to any app in iOS. And these are things like reverb and EQ and delay and all these sort of plugins. And what we didn't realize, what I didn't realize, and what many of the audience didn't realize, is that they'd all been updated. Yeah, we had updated not all of them, they'd updated about 4 or 5 of the 14 plugins. So we had a whole bunch of plugins that had new interfaces, that had new options, that had new functions, and we didn't know about any of these. So if you want to learn all about those, jump over to studiolivetoday.com. The video that I put out there went through each and every one of them. I also did a bit of a rant about the 5 things that I think GarageBand need to fix in 2023. Now, many of you know what I always rant about when I'm talking about these sort of things, but we're talking about things like the mastering. We don't have any master fader in GarageBand. We have auto normalization, which can ruin your GarageBand project. So this was my video as a plea to Apple to say, Apple, can you please jump in there to GarageBand and fix up some of these things, because they are making our lives more difficult. And you can also catch the first episode of the podcast. So if you missed the first episode, that's over there on the channel as well. And they were some of the highlights. And we, of course, had the happy hour. We had Your Music Live, and we had a GarageBand weekly show as well. And we'll tell you a little bit about what's happening on next week's show at the end of this podcast. Next week's show, next week on Studio Live Today. Wow, it's been one of those weeks, folks. I've been talking a lot, and you can tell. Let's jump in, shall we, to our feature topic for the week. And we're going to be talking about music formats. Now, I want to throw a question out there. Whether you're here live, whether you're listening to the podcast, whether you're watching the video replay, I want to ask you this question. I asked it, actually, and I'll reveal the results of the poll. I asked this on my YouTube channel, and the question is, what music format are you most nostalgic for here in 2023? Is it vinyl records? Is it cassettes? Is it CDs? Is it mini disc? Is it streaming? Did you love buying things on iTunes? I don't know if anyone's going to do that. Did you love 8 tracks? Back in the day, the old 8-track players. They didn't really make it to Australia, but I've heard that 8 tracks were quite popular in the US for a time there in the 70s. So whatever it was, let us know. I'd love to get your comments and read a few of them here on the podcast. And of course, if you're watching or listening after the fact, you can join the conversation. There's plenty of places. If you go to studiolivetoday.com, you can find all the ways you can interact, and we always love listening to what you've got to say. So for me, it's story time. Story time with Johns. I'm going to take you through my history of formats and different music formats that I've used and that I've loved and that I'm nostalgic for. So I was born in 1979, so I just snuck into the 70s, but it meant that most of my music listening started in the 80s. Now, in the 80s, records were still around and pretty popular, but something had kind of come in and started taking over from the records, and that was, of course, the cassette. The cassette, the standard, here's one. If you're watching on the video, I'm showing, this was a new old stock that I bought recently of an actual cassette, a 60-minute, a C60 cassette, just your standard kind of non-chrome, your ferrite cassette. So cassettes were big, and I bought my first music on cassette. I've told this before, but the very first, when I first started buying music, and look, I'm not counting the stuff that I probably had that was like Sesame Street or Play School, that was probably a record or a tape that I had when I was 4 or 5. But I remember being around 7 or 8 years old, and I was just getting into music, and it was the mid to late 80s. It was 1987, in fact. And the first 2 cassettes that I bought were from 2 bands, both that started with EU. Can you guess? Can anyone guess? 1987, and bands that started with the letters EU. I'll give you 5 seconds. We'll give you some Jeopardy music. Do, 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 do. It was Europe and the Eurythmics. So weirdly enough, I went to Kmart, which is where I still shop because I'm a classy dude. I went to Kmart and I went to the E section, and I'm like, oh no, Eurythmics or Europe? And I think from memory, I went with Europe first because the Final Countdown was massive. It was a huge hit. So I bought Europe. And then the next week, when I got my pocket money and I had enough for another $10 cassette, I went and bought the Eurythmics. So I think they're pretty solid. They've stood the test of time. I mean, who doesn't still love listening to Thorn in My Side and Final Countdown? I think there was some cool stuff. Yeah, we've had some folks. Eurogliders with another guess. I like it. We've had some folks that guessed Europe and the Eurythmics. Yeah, that was definitely the ones that we had back in the day. So that was my sort of first foray into that. At the same time, vinyl was on its way out, but vinyl was still cool. So in the mid to late 80s, we had a record player. We actually had a big old Sanyo. Now, for those that are watching on the video version here, I'm showing some pictures, but if you go to your Google and you type Sanyo quadraphonic hi-fi or something like that in there, you'll be seeing the same sort of thing. So ones like this are pretty much the one that we had in our lounge room, which had the big, it was a big sort of oak coloured cabinet. It had the record holder in the front there. It had the AM FM tuner, which was pretty revolutionary for the time. The big chrome knobs, which was my nickname in high school, and the flip top at the top where you'd throw your 33s and your 45s on there. So we had that in the family lounge room. So that was kind of the difference, is you'd listen, for me, I'd listen on my Walkman to my cassettes, and then if you wanted something for like more of a refined listening experience, you would do it in the lounge room. Now, Australians amongst you are going to understand this, but those outside probably don't know our man John Farnham, but what I'm holding up here on the video version is John Farnham's Age of Reason, which was from 1989. This was his second big album, the big follow-up to Whispering Jack, and this is what folks loved about vinyl, is you had the big gatefold that you can have all the lyrics in there, you had all your liner notes, you had this big cover that you could read, you could slip the record out, you'd make sure that you keep it in the plastic so that it didn't get damaged. RCA, there it is, the record company, RCA. So vinyl was still kind of cool and was around as well. But obviously vinyl was way less portable. I can't get that back in the thing. All you're hearing on the audio version is a man struggling. So I'm going to put that down to the side. So cassettes and vinyl, I'm pretty nostalgic because after that I bought a heap of cassettes. I would buy all the cassettes, and it sort of went through the late 80s. I was more into your pop music, and whatever they played on the radio was what I was listening to in the 80s. And then we got into the 90s, and you know what happened next. It was CDs. And I'll tell you a little bit about CDs in a moment. I'm just going to grab a few comments from the folks here. Joe Barry Glenn says VCR would record shows and take them away with us camping. There you go, using the VCR for music. Anyone else use a VCR for music? That's revolutionary. Scott Borthwick says, my brother had an 8-track in his first car. The only albums were the ones that were in the car already. There you go. Dan Egberg says, remember dubbing tapes and early CDs to tape before ripping and burning, stealing music before Napster. Yeah, the old double tape deck. Did anyone have that? The double tape deck where you could record from one to the other? Never sounded very good. And then they had high-speed dubbing, which was even worse, where it played the tape at double speed and it recorded at double speed, which if you know anything about tape recording, it means that it used less tape. Yeah, it's just not a good idea. Like, I know you wanted to get that Metallica black tape recorded for your friend before he got picked up by his mum, but still, you probably should have spent a little bit more time and done it at real time rather than the high-speed dubbing. Frank Terzo says, got myself a portable record player and still have a boombox with over 500 cassettes. There you go. Love it. Love it a lot. Very cool. Dan Ekbeck says, loved Annie Lennox and Cyndi Lauper when I was a kid. There you go. And Cold Acre, I bought a completely serviced Marantz cassette deck, 1981, a couple of years back. Plays tapes beautifully. That's the problem. Yeah, tapes these days, the tape decks you can buy, like I bought a little Philips one about 10 years ago, which was kind of the last of the decent ones. Everything you buy now, and if like me, you're a fan of the Techmoan YouTube channel, if you're not, you got to check out Techmoan. Matt over at Techmoan, amazing videos, goes into all this retro stuff about cassettes and vinyl and mini disc and just everything. Like, I love it. I know a lot of you are fans of Techmoan as well, so go check out Techmoan if you want that. So yeah, we got to the point where CDs were going to be a thing. So originally, in fact, I'll show you a couple of little, I'm sorry, apologize to the folks on the audio version, but go and look at this. If you're watching, if you're listening to this live, just grab your phone and just search out some of these terms, and you'll see and you'll get nostalgic for what I'm talking about. So I'm showing here some of the original tape decks. I had a National Panasonic with a brand, a Japanese-made brand that we had here in Australia. I'm sure they were around the world as well. And I'm showing some of the original tape decks. In the 80s, they were silver, and they were like the big boom box style. And then as we got into more of the 90s, we got the smaller little tape decks there that were black. So you could basically tell that if it was silver, it was probably 80s, and if it was black, it was 90s. We then moved in to the age of CDs, and I got, in 1990, I want to say. My very first CD player, it was one that was the little roundy boom boxes. So remember the boom boxes used to be kind of squared off, and then when CDs came about, we had these boom boxes that had the rounded corners and the little top loading clunky CD that would pop up, and you'd be able to play your CDs as well as your cassettes. So I have myself a little Sony boombox. I'm showing one right now that's like $180. That's probably what it cost in 1992, which is weird. It's weird how nostalgia goes and how people now pay about the same in today's dollars, which actually means that they are probably, actually no, because the inflation probably means that they're cheaper still. But a lot of stuff, especially the vintage stuff, is more expensive. So CDs kind of changed the world, and I had a lot of CDs that I started buying. I'm holding up here my copy of course, Nirvana's Nevermind, which was the original copy I bought in 1992, because I was a little bit late to the Nirvana game. And what I liked about CDs, number one, you got pristine digital audio, and let's just see how scratched up this one is because it's had plenty of plays. It's not too bad. There's a few fingerprints on there, but it's in decent condition. This one was thrown in and out of that boombox probably up to 100 times between about 1991 and 2000, or probably later than that. But the beauty of CDs is, unlike cassettes, you got a decent booklet as well. So you could actually come in here, and it wasn't quite the same as your gatefold on your vinyl, but you got photos, you got lyrics, you got a bit of information about all of the songs, and depending the type of CD and what the effort that the band went to, you got quite a bit of stuff in there. But yeah, it was the time to be alive, because instead of having to drop the needle in the right slot like you would on a vinyl record, instead of having to rewind and fast forward tapes that would degrade over time, everyone got their tape cord in a tape player at some stage and had to pull it out and try and resurrect it and wind it up with a Bic pen, all of that sort of jazz. CD, suddenly we had 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz high fidelity audio in the palm of our hand that we could play on a number of devices, including the Discman. And my goodness, did I love my Discman. I owned about 10 different portable CD players. And remember that the first ones, does anyone remember having these that you basically couldn't move them? They were big, chunky chunguses. And the second you moved it, the CD would start skipping. So it had to be like, it was the most stupid portable format, because it was totally portable, except it had to be completely stationary, which kind of defeats the purpose. And then the anti-skip, first 3 seconds, then 10 seconds, then like a minute. So what that would do, it was actually buffer the audio of the CD. It would store the audio in memory, and then it would play it back. So that was revolutionary for its time, to be able to have that level of just portability and listen to your audio in high fidelity as you drove around, or as you walked around, or as you caught the bus. Yeah, it was amazing stuff. And again, I know CDs came out in 1983, but for me and for many folks I know, it was the 90s. It was well and truly the 90s before we had CDs. And I definitely kept buying cassettes, judging by the cassettes I owned. So all the cassettes I have are Europe and Eurythmics and Bon Jovi and what was the other band I was just trying to think of? Guns N' Roses, yeah, the Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, all of those on cassette. And then it was CDs, was all the 90s. It was all the Pearl Jams and Nirvanas and Green Days and Offsprings and Soundgardens. They're all the CDs that I have. And like most people, I have a collection of probably 600 or 700 CDs sitting upstairs gathering dust that may or may not ever see the light of day. We'll see. Cold Acre says CDs didn't replace vinyl in music shops until around 1990 in Australia. Yeah, exactly. It was well and truly the night. So record stores used to have records for the real listeners and cassettes for the tryhards like me that just wanted to play the music. And then it really wasn't the 90s until we had a whole lot going on. Daddy Gable says, I bought a boombox with CD and cassette player in the 80s and it rocked. Yeah, it was amazing, wasn't it? To actually have the ability to do that. Ed Zalitsky says, thankfully I skipped digital tape recorders, too expensive, not enough market success. Yeah, that's the thing. That digital cassette, so we've skipped over a whole bunch of formats. Deliberately, because I didn't use them. But there was, of course, mini disc, which was like a digital disc format that kind of had some of the advantages of CDs, but was still more of like a portable sort of tape type format. You had DAT tape. Anyone use a DAT tape? The only time I've used DAT tape ever was when my band recorded demos and the bloke had like an 8-track digital recorder and he had a DAT tape deck and he mastered it down to DAT tape. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever because it was this tiny little micro cassette with this high fidelity recording of our music on it. And I'm like, wow, DAT tape's going to be the future. Totally. Friggsy says, REM's Automatic for the People was my first CD. That's a fine one. That's a very fine one indeed. Tremor Bear had a Sanyo boombox in 1982. I took it with me to Australia and Indonesia. Had so much fun. Absolutely. Yeah, gotta love that. Gotta love the old school stuff. And Joe Barry Glenn had a Bush radio so that I could listen to Radio Luxembourg. Very classy. Very good stuff indeed. So I just wanted to, I don't know why, but I was thinking about this during the week that I wanted to chat on this week's show just about music formats and the nostalgia that I definitely have, because I know every time I talk to someone, it just ignites people, because I think we love a bit of nostalgia, probably have rose-colored glasses. I think as someone in the chat here live said, the cassettes were just god-awful, and in some ways they were, but in other ways they were kind of the coolest thing ever, because they, I don't know, just having a little box, having like your Casingle here. And look, you can have ridiculous things, like the Casingle I'm holding up here from Heart, by the way, I Don't Want to Need You, is bright yellow. And you just don't get that sort of thing these days, because you can't have a bright yellow Spotify playlist compared to anything else, or a bright yellow iTunes or Apple Music streaming. But you could do a little bit of something different back in the day. I cannot get any of these things back in. There you go. EMI, Heart. Yes, you even get my coughs. Recording live. Why? Because I'm a lazy man and I don't like to edit. Not true. If anyone does have any questions, by the way, and you're listening to the show live, you can indeed just put a big Q or the word question in front of your comment. We will get to question time a little bit later on. And if I miss it, you can ask it again later. Let's move on to our next topic, because we've got a bunch of them to talk about here today. Actually, Prism says cassettes had so much storage capacity for the size too. I remember always wondering if there was something else on the B side of a cassette. Yeah, that was the cool thing, is there was always room to put stuff on. And because if you got like the 90 minutes, the C90s, you could basically fit either 2 whole albums. You could fit one on each side of a cassette, or you could make the most epic mixtapes. We didn't even talk about mixtapes, did we? And we didn't talk about the resurgence of vinyl and cassettes. Oh, there's so much to talk about. But anyway, I just wanted to whet your appetite, and maybe we'll revisit it in the future. So I wanted to talk about a topic I get asked about a lot, and that is EQ, or equalization. We were talking about the old formats there, and you'd have a graphic equalizer, wouldn't you? Back on your old boom boxes and your old CD players and record players, you would have some form of EQ. Now, EQ can be as basic as a tone knob that is bass and treble, or it can be 2 tone knobs, which is bass and treble, or it can be 5 bands, which is your lows, your mids, and your highs, and everything in between, or it can be 10 bands, or 12 bands, or 20 bands. So what is a band? What is EQ? What is equalization? And why should you care about it for your music? Well, it breaks down to this. EQ, or equalization, is really just about the volume levels of your frequencies. It's like a volume knob, but instead of turning up the whole sound, the whole song, the whole mix, or turning down the whole sound, the whole song, the whole mix, you are just turning up and down a particular frequency. And it really is as simple as that. You can go into a whole lot of information, because there's things like linear, there's things like high passes and low passes and cuts and Butterworth and all these other things. But in its absolute basic form, what you want to do with EQ is simply listen to your music and ask yourself the question, is there any part of this in the lows, the mids, or the highs that is sticking out that shouldn't be? And the reason I say it that way, not does this need more bass, is that the most successful folks that use EQ that I know of and that I've worked with and that I've seen create great music use what's called subtractive EQ. And subtractive EQ simply means that instead of going, oh, this song needs more bass, and throwing the bass up, you go, this song has too much treble. Let's find those treble frequencies that are making it feel like there's not enough bass, and reducing those. So subtractive is just the opposite of additive, where you're finding the frequencies that don't sound right and you're reducing them. And it really is as simple as that. If you've ever looked at a parametric EQ, which is those ones that have the little graphs, the little waveforms, you would have seen that you can move the dots side to side. And that's just finding the different frequencies. And the best way to learn this is to use the sweep method. Now, many folks say, don't sweep your EQs. It's not the right way to do it long term. And they're probably right. But when you're starting out, it can really help you identify what sounds are in what frequency. So the way I'd suggest this is grab a vocal and then start playing it back, grab an EQ dot, put it right down to the bottom, and then move it left and right. So you're hearing what frequency is being cut out. And then grab that same EQ dot, pull it all the way to the top, and move it left and right. So you're hearing what those frequencies sound like. And again, remember, frequency doesn't have to be a four-letter word. It's not hard. It is just how many hertz or how many kilohertz that particular sound is. Everything from your biggest bass sound down at 80 hertz, your boom boom boom, through your 1000 and 2000 hertz in your mid-range, or your lower mid-range 400 800 hertz, all the way up to those really airy high frequencies that you can't really actually hear. You more sense and feel, like the airy frequencies up above 10,000 hertz. And again, you don't really have to know any of that. I know a lot of people go to these charts where you can see here's where your piano sits, and here's where your vocals sit, and here's where your drums sit, and here's where your bass sit. That can be a little bit misleading. Plus, there's also the frequencies, the overtones that you'll hear that are at different frequencies. So my recommendation with EQ is, especially when you're starting out, find yourself a parametric EQ. Now, in GarageBand, I used to recommend something called LRC5 or LRC7 on iOS. The EQ in GarageBand Mac is perfectly fine for this, but most parametric EQs, the ones that have the curve that you can add a dot and move it up and down, they're a great way to learn about EQ. So just spend some time, put an EQ on all your different tracks, on your bass, on your drums, on your pianos, on your keys, on your vocals, and your guitars, and just move them around and see what happens. So what does my guitar sound like when I pull all of the treble out of it? Well, it sounds like you're playing inside a box and doesn't sound that great. But what does that same guitar sound like when I pull all the bass out of it? Well, it actually sounds kind of tinny and it's not really good. What about when I remove the bass and treble and add a whole bunch of mid-range? Well, that's where you get that boxy kind of sound, that muddy mid-range sound. So you're just going to learn from that and learn, all right, what sounds are good and what sounds are bad, and what do I need to do with it? So it really does help. And as SyncCat says, if you learn about the harmonic series, it will help. So yeah, that's your next level. So once you've got your stuff together with your EQ and you've learned about the bass frequencies, you can then learn about what those harmonic overtones are actually for that note. So I won't go into detail here. And to be honest, I haven't done my theory homework for a very long time, so I wouldn't be able to tell you it in enough detail. But go to a Warren Hewitt or a Rick Beato or someone and learn about EQ and learn about the different frequencies, because it's not just that your 440 is your A, and then all the other frequencies move from there. That same 440 hertz has tones at different intervals as it goes up. So you need to learn a little bit about that. So there's a lot you can learn about it, but start with the absolute basics, which is that EQ is a volume knob for your frequencies, and that is it. All right, let's move to our next topic, CES. So we are here in January of 2023, and that means that the Consumer Electronics Show, CES, is just completed, and as per usual, it had a lot of weird stuff. It had all of the usual things that we get there. So if you don't know about CES is basically an opportunity for people who are making products to tell you about their newest and greatest products, but it also attracts all the wacky products. So all the things that are like what we call vaporware, which means that a company will put it out there, but it may actually never see the light of day. So that's the sort of thing that's released there. And it can be things in like the automotive industry. A lot of TVs are released and announced at CES. A lot of audio gear, which we'll talk about. But this year, what I've said here in my rundown here is CES is in the toilet, because for whatever reason, I don't know what prompted this, but this year's CES seemed to be all about gadgets to measure your wee. There's no nicer way to say that. So there were a number of different gadgets that were going to revolutionize your bathroom habits. Now, some of them were, toilets that rivaled the best Japanese toilets that did all the things, and you can imagine some of the things that they do. But interestingly, a lot of the health and well-being stuff that came out was things like a urinalysis toilet that would literally it does exactly what you think it will. You do your business, and then it tells you how much vitamin C you have and whether you're deficient in your B12 and all the rest of it. Now, many people will jump on the oh, this is the government trying to spy on us, and I don't know about any of that. I just know that this is an interesting thing for technology. However, let's not talk about the toilet. Let's get out of the gutter and let's talk about audio and what happened with audio. I kept my eye out for anything good. Here's the thing, because I'm big into the Apple stuff, Apple have their own things. They do their own MacBook, not MacBook. They used to do Macworld. They now do things like their Worldwide Developer Conference, and they do their keynote speeches. They don't spend a lot of time at CES doing anything there, so there wasn't a whole lot in the world of Apple. But there was sort of the accessories and the things that go along with that. And one of the cool things and one of the trends I guess I've seen is what I'm doing right now. So live streaming and recording audio. There's been this sort of consumer versus prosumer versus professional sort of divide, I guess, over the last couple of years and almost to a decade now. And it's really closing that gap, because a lot of the gear that you're now getting for your home studio is actually able to be used to provide professional quality audio. And one of the coolest things I saw was from Audio Technica. And again, if you're watching on the video version, I'm showing you this now, but it's called the Audio Technica headset. It is I've got to find the model number now here, I'm scrolling down. It is the ATH M50X STS or STS USB. So what these are, if you've used Audio Technica headphones, you'd know the M50 series. You can get a whole bunch of different Audio Technica headphones, but their monitor headphones, the M50s, are really cool. They're one of the industry standards, and a lot of folks use them. What this is doing, though, that I thought was really interesting, is it's a headset that's actually grabbing a decent microphone. So the microphone that is in these headsets now is actually from the 20 series. So if you've got an AT2020, the little, the boom that you have on a headset, the boom microphone on that now is using a large diaphragm condenser, which is the first time I've seen something like this. And for someone like me, or if you're doing podcasting or live streaming, or even just want a really good video conference call, this is pretty revolutionary. Now, I'm waiting for someone to actually get a pair of these and try and record vocals with them. I don't think it's designed for that whatsoever, but it is really interesting that at the high end of this sort of gear, we're getting these hybrid devices. I know our friend Jade Starr on How to App on iOS is using like a headset mic now, gets great quality audio from that. I think this could be the future, because there's still a challenge where if you are starting out, you have to get yourself an audio interface, you have to get yourself a pair of headphones, and you have to get yourself a microphone. What this is doing is it's grabbing all those things and putting them into your headset. So, and the cool thing, like you look at the specs of these things, they're 24-bit sound, they're 96 kilohertz audio. These are high quality converters in there, and it's basically like having an audio interface, a set of headphones, and a large diaphragm condenser microphone all hanging on your head, which I just thought was pretty cool. I hadn't seen anything like it before. Usually your gaming headsets have microphones that are just trash. They are potatoes. They are not the thing you want. And even the audio quality you get from them is not good. And they're not closed back. So you're getting leakage and bleeding going into your microphone. I just thought this was one of the coolest things that I saw at CES. As Rena says, yeah, wow, like airplane pilot. Yeah, that's basically what it's like. You're getting the quality of like your helicopter pilot and airplane pilot headsets these days, which I thought is pretty cool. So that's kind of the thing. The CES, did it do anything for me? Do I want to go and buy myself a toilet add-on to analyze my pee? Probably not. But will a set of these Audio Technicas be in my future? I reckon so. Even just so that my microphone distance can be the same, so that I'm not getting up here and then not getting too far away. Or clicking my microphone, as you're probably hearing now, on the audio version. Let's grab our next topic. Now, this one I thought was super fascinating. And AI, I mean, is AI a four-letter word? Yeah, there's a lot of talk about AI and artificial intelligence. And it can do some things really well, some things it kind of struggles with. ChatGPT's been the big thing that's taken the world by storm, which is an AI text generator where you can put in a prompt and it tells something. There's obviously lots of AI art where you can put in, give me a picture of bananas playing drums, and it will give you a weird picture of bananas playing drums. And then there's AI music, of course, where you can actually use AI algorithms to determine, hey, play me a nice chord progression that sounds melancholy. And there's apps out there that will do that. What I haven't seen so far is the ability to replace some of the things like AI, like audiobook narration. And Apple, of all people, have actually just released 4 AI narrators. Now, as soon as I heard this, I'm like, I'm a big audiobook fan, right? And I love like Will Wheaton is one of the best narrators I've ever heard. If Will Wheaton is reading a book, like if you've read Ready Player One, the classic sci-fi book, it's amazing, and it's brought to life by the narrators. Now, do I think that AI is ever going to replace a human narrator that can actually feel and can actually sell you on it? No. But here's the problem. There are so many books out there that will simply never get a narrator. They're not going to be able to get a Will Wheaton to read their book. So is AI narration good enough? Well, we're going to put that to the test right here and right now. So what I'm going to do is, if you're watching here live, I've actually gone to Apple Books, and you can do the same. If you go to Apple Books on your iPhone or your iPad or even your Mac, you can actually jump in here. And if you search the term narrated by Apple Books, and hit your search button there, it's going to bring up a series of books here, and you can actually listen to what the AI narrator sounds like. Now, I've already downloaded a couple of these, so if I jump over here to my library, weirdly enough, the majority of the books so far that they're using are romance novels. I have no idea why the romance genre. Maybe it's the most popular genre that there's so many of them. Like, the old Mills and Boons books? Maybe there's so many of them out there, but there's not enough people that can actually read them. Or would want to read them. So we're going to listen to a couple here, and I'm going to play you some examples. So the first one I have here. Now, I know nothing of these authors, and I know nothing of these books. But the first one here I'm going to play is called what is it called? The Hidden. It's by Joe. Hang on, let's bring it up here. No, it's not coming up. By Joe Chumas, and this is the quality of AI narration. Let's take a listen.
The Journal of Hesba Iqbal Sultan Hanum al-Shazira, Cairo, August 1st, 1919. The beatings are getting worse, but Habrid's brutality serves no purpose.
So apparently this... Weirdly enough, when I did the test, I hadn't heard this book either, by the way, but the beatings are getting worse. What a great first line of a book. But all of these books, I don't know what it is, but all these romance books seem to also be like really like extreme. I don't know. Whatever you're into, whatever floats your boat. But that's Madison. That's one of Apple's new AI narrators. I thought I would grab a different one because, like I said, there's 4 of them. I've only got 2 of them here, but I grabbed this one from Richie Green called Pale Moon Rising. It's got 2 stars, but we'll listen to it anyway. I like this one because it has a little introduction here that tells you that it's not quite human.
You're listening to the audiobook, Pale Moon, Season 1, Episode 1, Rising, by Richie Green, featuring digital narration from Apple Books.
What do you reckon?
Introduction.
Would you listen to a whole book with narration by Apple Books? I mean, yeah, it's impressive. It's better than I thought it would be. Is it going to replace narrators? I don't know. I don't think so. It's I don't know. It's good though. Again, here's where I think this is going to be useful. If you need to read like a non-fiction book, where this would have been great for me is that when I had to read like a 26-page report in my day job, if I could get Apple narrator to read that for me, not in that really bad AI voice that you get, like the standard Siri voice, that just drives me nuts. But this is a good step towards the fact that when you have to read large passages of text, and if like me, you are not a great reader, but you are a pretty good listener, I think this could actually have a little bit of a future. I don't know. So let me know what you think. AI narrators, yes, no, maybe. I don't know. It's interesting. It leads us to our next topic. Smokey says that they speak with no feelings. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Because again, the Will Wheaton book, like you can tell when Will's excited. So a good narrator, you can tell when things are really bad. You can tell when things are amazing. Like, there's a lot more. What would the word be? Emphasizing. They would emphasize the right syllables, and and sometimes your AI they do emphasize the wrong syllables, and it makes it sound a little bit weird. Speaking of which, the related topic here, and what I think is that artificial intelligence in general, people are worried that AI is going to replace everything in the music industry, in all the other industries. AI is going to come and it's going to. They took our jobs, the old South Park thing. But here's the thing. I think what AI will replace is the mediocre. And I've heard this in a few different places and a few commentators talking about this in the last few weeks. But AI is not going to compete with the very best artists, the very best musicians, the very best narrators, the very best writers. What it's going to do is it's going to mean that people that are phoning it in, that have just been doing the minimum effort for the longest time, if you can get an AI that does exactly what they do, it's going to kind of push the quality up. And it's going to mean that people that are mediocre at things are going to have to improve. And I think the biggest thing with this, like, have you read a news article lately? I try not to because I like to be a happy person, and reading news articles doesn't make me happy. It usually angers up the blood. But if you've read some news articles lately, I'm like, man, I don't know if you're day one out of journalism school, but learn to write, my friend, because the writing in a lot of these news sites is so terrible that it actually looks like it's been written by a bad AI. And then when you see what the AI does, yeah, it lacks the emotion. But in terms of like factual reporting and writing something about a thing, it doesn't make the mistakes. It doesn't make the blatant mistakes and have the strangeness that some human stuff can seem to have in there. So I think that there's going to be this niche. There's going to be this middle chunk where things that can be done. It's a bit like, I don't know, it's a bit like things in the automation of factories and things. Something that can just be a repeatable task can just be done again and again. And I think things like writing articles about what happened, like, I'm sorry, but if you're a sports reporter and you're writing, how many times can you say, oh yeah, and the Dolphins this week blew out the Giants 31-14, and Eli Manning had 14 tries and hit 7 goals. Can you tell I don't know anything about American football? Yeah. But that sort of thing can really easily be replicated, because if you've read one sports report, you've kind of read them all. And again, people are going to pile on to me and say, no, but you don't know Joe Smith. Joe Smith writes the best sports articles, and I read Joe Smith every week. Yeah, maybe. But maybe Joe Smith is just really good. But maybe Tim Cunnington is not. So no more Cunnington, but lots of Joe Smith. So Tim Cunnington needs to either lift his game or find another job. Poor Tim Cunnington. I have to get a T-shirt that just says, remember Tim Cunnington. All right, stop saying that. Speaking of AI, they're going to misinterpret the words I'm saying there and turn it into something else if I'm not careful. SM Borthwick says, don't get AI to narrate your audiobooks. Just ask Howling Fret Fumbler to read it for you. Yeah, so we've got people in this very community that have amazing voices. Really good. Mark Bro says a guy just published a children's book that he wrote and illustrated by AI over a single weekend. There you go. Maybe I need to do that. Just program some AI. I could be AI right now. You don't know. I could be an AI voice. I am hoping that in the future I can do what... Did everyone see that... who's the Darth Vader bloke? Luke, I am your father. What's that guy's name? Oh, no. Don't you hate it when you have one of these mental blanks? His name is... Why do I have Sarah Jessica Parker in my head? Earl Jones? James L. Jones, thank you. Whew, we got there. I'm like, Sarah Jessica Parker. I know he had like 3 names. He was one of those 3-name people. So apparently that would have been a very different movie. Not to mention the fact that she was like 2 years old when Star Wars came out. But if, can you imagine if Darth Vader was, instead of being played by James L. Jones, was played by Sarah Jessica Parker? She'd be like... I didn't really want to tell Luke that he was my father. I would rather go shopping for shoes. So I went down to Fifth Avenue and ran into Cynthia. No, I can't remember the name. Oh, man, I can't even remember any names of Sex and the City characters. But yeah. Is that the theme music? I don't know. I've only absorbed Sex and the City through listening sort of third hand as my wife has it playing in the background. All right. It would be a very different movie, is what I'm saying there. Man, I'm big with the bad dad jokes and references here today. All right, shall we? James L. Jones says Omni Collective, who is 90. Yeah, so I'll finish the point there and then we'll move on. So James L. Jones has actually licensed his voice. So because he's played Darth Vader for so long, he's actually sold the rights to his voice so that Disney can use it forever. They can be making Star Wars 12 : enough already in 2029. He could be long past and they can still use his voice because he said so many words. And let's be honest, it's not like Darth Vader's ever going to be saying, check out this amazing colors in this watercolor painting by Van Gogh. Like, that's not words he's going to say. But the Death Star will rise again. The Force Awakens. I don't know. I'm not a Star Trek fan, so I don't know any of this stuff. Oh, triggering. But yeah, so he's licensed all of that so that his family can continue benefiting. And when his voice is used in the future, he can still be getting royalties from it. Otherwise, he's just going to be replaced with a sound-alike. So I don't know. Do you think that's good? Or is that removing jobs? If Sarah Jessica Parker did in fact want to become the new Darth Vader, has this limited her opportunities because James L. Jones is going to keep the job even after he's gone? Can you imagine if that happened? If you were working for a company and there was like the old guy that's like the manager, and you're like, oh man, I can't wait till Earl retires because he's been running this company for 30 years and he's 74 years old and he's about to retire, and then Earl comes in one day and he's like, well, I've got some good news and some bad news. I'm finally retiring. And you're like, yes, I finally got a chance. I can be the VP of Sailing Peanuts. And then he's like, unfortunately, my AI replicant will be in charge now from now on. So I'm going to go retire. I'm moving to Florida. I'm going to hang out on the beach with my wife. And by wife, I mean new wife, because I traded her in on a 20-year-old model. And the company's going to be run by AI Earl. And then the drones continue working under the harsh, cruel reins of AI Earl. We are getting off on some weird tangents here today. Let's talk about vanity metrics and scams. So I had an interesting scam this week, and I thought I'd share it with you because it's a tale of warning. First of all, you know this, and I don't have to tell you this, but if something sounds too good to be true, it almost definitely is too good to be true. So right now, there are a lot of scammers out there, and they're sending you emails and messages like this. Hello, sir. Do you need music promotion? Now, that sounds kind of innocent. I answered, hi, not right now, thanks. Pretty reasonable. Next comment, send your music. All right, is this AI? Because if it is, it's not really interpreting it very well. So it was clearly a chat bot that was waiting for me to reply with anything, and then liked my comment and then said, send your music. And I'm like, okay, I'll play along here. No, thanks. Instantly likes my comment, and then I get this. My service is 1, Spotify streams, 2, Spotify followers, 3, YouTube views, 4, YouTube monetization, 5, YouTube subscribers, 6, YouTube likes, 7, Instagram followers, 8, Instagram views and likes, 9, website subjects, 10, backlinks creation, 12, social media ads campaign, and a partridge in... Yeah, you get the gist. So, wanted to sell me on all of this stuff. I got... at this point, all I'd said was nothing. And I'm getting all this thing. So, unfortunately, I made the mistake that I don't want you to make, which is I revealed that I was a human. And this is the problem. This is the problem with answering the phone to those robocall scams that want to sell you a car insurance policy. And, you might have watched Scammer Payback and Program and be like, oh, I want to be like them and I want to play with these scammers. Yeah, that's lovely, except you've just been added to the list of actual people that will at least answer their phone. And they don't care if you're messing with them or whether you're legitimate. You're now getting a whole bunch more robocalls. Unfortunately, it's the same thing with these social media things, whether it's via email, Instagram message, Facebook Messenger, on a forum, on a group, on a page, directly to you. Yeah, the second that you interact and you do anything, you are being added to a list of people that they're going to contact more. So if you ever wonder, like, why me? Why do I get so many of these things? It's probably because when you got the first one or the second one, you responded and you engaged. Even if it was just to say, P.O. wanker, even if you did that, then you're going to get more of them. So what are these scams? What are they doing? And why should you avoid them? So let's just say that you actually wanted one of those services. Let's just say that you did want to grow your Spotify audience. Let's say that you did want to increase your YouTube subscribers or your Instagram followers. If you do it through one of these services, you are asking for trouble. Not only is it generally against the terms of services of the platform, but the way that these places do it, excuse me, need to cough. The way that these places do it is through utilizing robots. So yes, maybe AI, but using robots, using automated methods, or they use farms of very underpaid workers in third world countries. Either way, not super cool and definitely breaching the terms of service. So if you're ever wondering how these places that you might see advertising online that say, I can get you 1,000 YouTube views for the low price of just $19.95, and you're like, cool, I'll pay my $19.95, I'll get 1,000 views. Guess what? Those 1,000 views are coming from dodgy IP addresses that eventually will get flagged by the platform as being a fake view, and that can have a lot of ramifications. The same with your followers, the same with your subscribers. These companies are way smarter than you and me, and they're way smarter than the scammers. Sure, the scammers can work out new ways to hack systems and get away with it for a short period of time, but eventually they'll get found out. And even if they don't, even if you don't get found out, you're like, yeah, I got away with it. What's the point? Like, what is actually the point of having, say, I've got my Instagram, and I've got no idea how many Instagram followers I actually have. Maybe it's a couple of hundred. Say I got 200 Instagram followers. And say I paid a service to get me 1,000 more. I've now got 1,200 Instagram followers. It's still only 200 people that actually give a crap about anything I'm doing. The other 1,000 couldn't care less because they're either robots or they're accounts that were created by lowly paid workers in these farm factory places. I'm getting so worked up that I had to cough. I'm going to have some water. So yeah, please don't fall for scams. It's not worth it. And if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So what do you do, by the way? Well, you work hard, you create good content, you engage with people, you use social media as a two-way platform, and then you get people on board that actually care about you and what you do. Because again, remember, the reason I headed this whole thing up with vanity metrics is that they are vanity metrics. They got nothing to do with what's actually going on. You might feel a little bit better if you're looking at your subscriber count or your follower count and it says 1,000 instead of 100, but it actually does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. In fact, here's the thing. Here's the kicker. If you just listen to that and you're like, I'm still going to go out and do it anyway, Johns, whatever. It actually harms you. It damages you. Because if you've got 1,000 followers and every time you put a post out, none of them engage with it, what does that tell the algorithm? It says that your stuff should not be looked at. It says that your stuff is less valuable because algorithms are based on the proportion of people that follow or subscribe to you that actually engage with your content. Therefore, if you have fake subscribers, fake followers, fake people in your platforms, it looks bad. And especially if you do it on a video. Like I've seen stories of sometimes folks that they'll have one video and they're like, oh, I'm gonna pump this video. That'll work really well. I'll buy 2,000 views for a video, and they do it. And then you look at their channel and it's like 50 views, 100 views, 150, 200 views, 2,000 views, 100 views, 150. Like, that looks really obvious to other humans. It's like, yeah, you done something super dodgy there, bro. And the algorithm can pick that up in a second. Like, it's so simple and it's so pointless and it makes me cry. So don't do it. Listen to Johns on this one. Don't do it. How are we going on time? We're coming towards the end of the show. We've gone off on some tangents here today. I got to tell you. So let's jump in. AI Earl. That needs to be a cartoon or something. Yeah, AI Earl. Go AI Earl. He's cool. All right. Let's finish off with a couple of quick topics here. So I had an interesting one this week, and let me know your views. I'm really interested on this one because in my thumbnails, and when I'm listening to music on Your Music Live, and just in my life in general, I like to throw the horns. Now, if you're watching the video version, I'm doing it right now. Now, my children were saying it should be the one. Do you go horns thumbs out, or do you go horns thumb in front? Anyway, I'm throwing the horn. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing my index finger and my little finger, I'm pointing them upwards, and my other two fingers are bent over, and then my thumb is either under or off to the side. And that's the universal sign for, yeah, man, rock and roll, that's cool. So someone left a comment for me this week, and I hadn't honestly actually even ever thought about this, but they said, "Hi Pete, I really like your video." They were very polite and respectful. Got no problem with this comment whatsoever. "Hi Pete, really enjoy your videos. I have noticed that on your thumbnails lately, you've been using satanic signs. Is there any reason for that?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah. I guess technically the horns are." It's the horns. It's the devil horns, isn't it? It's the sign of the devil, technically. But I don't know. Have we? In my mind, that was such a like a 70s, 80s, like when it was like satanic metal, and I know that there's a subset of that, but I don't know. I just thought that it's something cool. To me, it's less aggressive than a fist. A fist seems worse to me. So if you were like at a concert and you were just like yes, and you were waving your fist in the air, I think that looks weirder. If you've got a thumbs up in the air. I mean, that would look kind of cool if you just did a mosh pit and everyone's just got their thumbs up, like giving the thumbs up sign. Yeah, word. Or the ridgy didge, like you're doing that one. Anyone remember that? Ridge, ridgy didge. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. And I don't know if this is me being insensitive or whether this was the viewer perhaps being oversensitive or whether it's somewhere in between. But I don't know. I don't know. Thumbs in. Yeah, Mark Bro says it's thumbs in. That's what I've always gone with. But what do you reckon? It caught me by surprise and a bit left field because I thought of all the things I do that are pretty wrong, and I know that there's plenty of them, and of all the views that I have that are potentially controversial because I'm a lefty hippie, then surely just throwing the horns is just like yay, rock and roll. I don't know. Omni Collective Creativity says technically the devil was originally a pagan horn god from the Celtics or the Celtics. Friggsy says one of my friends said that to me too. He has become very religious over the past few years. I use it all the time. To me, it means keep on rocking, and I guess that's all I mean too by it. So I don't know. I don't think I'm going to change. I'm sorry. I don't think so. But yeah, to me, it's just such a rock and roll thing. And to me, it's a positivity thing. I don't think there's any negative connotations. I've never walked around. I've never been at a gig and someone's throwing the horns and I'm just like, ooh, they must be a devil worshipper. Like it's never crossed my mind. But again, maybe it's just my ignorance. I just thought that was interesting. I'd throw it out there. The other thing I just wanted to put out there is that if you are a YouTube content creator and have been wondering when YouTube will start monetizing their shorts, their short form content, it is happening from February this year. So if you are part of the YouTube content creator program, if you have your channel monetized, you would at the moment have just received new terms and conditions. And one of those includes shorts monetization. So what does that mean? Well, it probably means that YouTube are going to start advertising in shorts, which, I mean, that's one thing because they're going to put ads in there. And it means that the plus side of that is if you're putting shorts out there and you're monetized, you're going to be able to actually make money from your shorts. Now, YouTube are going to be keeping 60% as opposed to the 30% that they keep on regular form videos. So twice as much. But I guess, you know what, half of something is better than 0%. So what, 40% of the 100% is better than 0% of 0%. Like that's the positive way to look at it. The other way to look at it is you're kind of getting a wee bit shafted there. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there to make sure that if you are out there and you are a YouTube content creator, please go and accept the new terms and conditions if you want to explore the possibility to get monetized there. All right. We've only got a couple of questions here, so we're going to be a quick question time here on the show this week. The question, we've got a couple here that are from the live folks here, and then I've got one that came in through the week. So we've got one here from Rena who says, the question just reminded me, I've always sung live with a Shure M80. The guy that did my sound said the frequency matched my voice best. Wonder if a USB mic could match the frequency of that mic. Interestingly, so microphone frequency responses, they're those sort of little charts you'll see on the side of the microphone. And that will, so what the person was probably saying is that particular microphone either had a boost or a cut at the frequencies where your voice sounded best. So different microphones will have different frequency curves. I highly recommend going over to a channel called Podcastage, Podcastage, and checking out Bandrew over at Podcastage. He goes into a lot of detail about microphones and about audio and has great information over there. But what you'd probably want to do is if you've got a microphone that works really well, look up online and find out what its frequency response looks like, its frequency curve. And then if you're looking at a new microphone, look at the same sort of thing. So, for instance, a lot of people use the Shure SM7B. Now, that one, because it is a what do they call it? Like a studio microphone, a broadcast microphone, that has sort of some low and low mid kind of boosts. So, some people's voice sound amazing on it, but some people will just sound way too boomy, and that may be the case. Whereas other microphones, so particularly like large diaphragm condenser microphones, or even small diaphragm especially, have a lot more boost in the treble end. So they'll sound a bit crispier. So what you want to do is find the right microphone for you, and that can be around its frequency response. So that would be my recommendation there. And remember that a USB microphone, it's still a microphone, but the difference is it has its own built-in audio interface. So if you buy a low quality USB microphone with a low quality audio interface, it really doesn't matter how good that microphone is, because the preamp and the converters that are built in are not going to be good. So that's why if you're buying a USB microphone, either accept that if it's cheaper, it's probably not going to have the greatest converters and preamp in there in the interface section, or buy yourself something better, or go down the route of getting a XLR microphone and an audio interface. A question that we had that came in through the week was from someone asking about using a mixer. They had a PreSonus mixer that can multi-track record, but they couldn't get the sound back out and back in for their recording in iOS. Now, I've had this question twice in the last week, so I thought I would mention it here, because what I have found in my experience, so I have a mixer, I've used multiple mixers with my iPhone and my iPad. There is something about, especially GarageBand, but other apps on iOS, that it is difficult to get the audio input from a mixer and having the monitoring come back out with just what's being played back and not getting it mixed back into your signal. Because it seems to be, and the person here was having this problem with their mixer, is that they could record in their first track, but then when they tried to overdub, it wasn't playing back their original track. Like, there's no way to set up the ability to hear back what you've already recorded and then record over the top. To date, my number one bit of advice with this is, when you are just doing multi-tracking, an audio interface is so much better than a mixer. It is just so much simpler, because you don't have to play around with things like mix minus, with different mixing, with the monitoring setups, with all the different sort of latency-free monitoring that you have on a mixer, because some of those settings are really difficult to program in, and some are almost even impossible. And if you're using something like a Mac or a PC, it's a lot better, because you've got both hardware and software options to decide what the monitoring is going to be and how it's actually going to come through. But the problem with a mixer is it doesn't really seem to be that well supported with iOS. So my solve for this is, buy yourself something like a Steinberg UR12 or a Focusrite Solo, like $100 audio interface, and use that. Because really, unless you're recording a whole live band or you're doing live streaming, in my experience, an audio interface is just so much simpler, because you literally just have two functions. You plug in your headphones, the audio comes out, and you're monitoring what's being played. You plug in a microphone or a guitar, and that's audio in. You're recording that audio into into your digital audio workstation. So for me, I would just go with an audio interface. And I know I don't like that. I don't like the answer to be, don't use what you have, buy something new. But I've had too many people spend too many hours of their time grappling with a mixer when they're trying to actually record. Let's grab one more question here, and this one comes to us from Ed Zelensky. Great to see Ed Zelensky here. What is Studio Live Today looking forward to in 2023? And this is a good segue, because we're going to finish off the show in a moment by telling you what's coming up this week, right here on Studio Live Today. So what am I looking forward to in 2023 is a great question. I'm looking forward to making more music. Triple M, making more music in 2023. I think the last few years, because if you don't know the background here, I've been doing this job full time for just over 2 years. I've been doing Studio Live Today for coming up 7 years. In February this year, it'll be 7-year anniversary of Studio Live Today. So over that time, I've created a lot of music, but I've also focused on helping others create music. Now, earlier on, I did that sort of through more practical teaching, where I'd be making a song and then I kind of share the learnings from it. And more recently, because I'm doing a whole lot more live streams, I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing more tutorials, there's been less actual music being made. So I guess what I'm looking forward to in 2023 is making sure that I'm focusing in on making music. At the end of every show, I say, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, keep creating. At the moment, I feel like I'm only doing the middle one. I'm not being kind to myself by giving myself a creative outlet, and I'm not actually creating my own music. So if I had to summarize it and put it together, it would be that. So the proof will be in the pudding. You have to watch this space to see exactly how well I do with actually creating more music in 2023. But we will definitely see how we go. So that is it for this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the trip down memory lane. Remember to let me know your favorite music platform. And as I promised, I did promise this earlier in the show, we would review, because I asked this question about a day ago. I said, what music format are you most nostalgic for? And can we get a drum roll? Between the three big hitters, what do you think got up there? What do you think was the most popular? I'll give you again about 5 seconds of thinking music, like we do on the Jeopardy. Do, 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 do. So, the third most nostalgic format was cassettes. Yeah, your tapes. Your cassette tapes were the third most popular format. So you probably know the other two that are going to be 1 and 2. The second most popular, drum roll please, was your vinyl. Your vinyl records came in as the second most popular physical format of media. And number 1, drum roll please, the compact disc. Am I surprised by this? Yeah, kinda. Maybe it means that there's not as many old farts around this audience as I thought there were. Maybe there's more young people who are now nostalgic for CDs. I'm a bit excited by this because maybe my 700 CDs upstairs gathering dust will maybe have some value one day. But who knew that CDs were what most people are nostalgic for over vinyl and cassettes? Is that more that vinyl and cassettes are not considered nostalgic because they're kind of made a comeback, while CDs are kind of the forgotten format that no one uses anymore? I don't know, but I just thought that was super interesting and fascinating that CDs, most nostalgic. And yes, digital MP3s even had 10% of people. So I'll go through this. So it was 32% for compact discs. It was 29% for vinyl, 24% for cassettes, 10% for digital for MP3s, and 4% for others, which was mostly mini disc. And I think someone said 8-track. I don't know if they're actually nostalgic for that or if they just did that. We will see. So coming up this week on Studio Live today, we have all of the usual suspects shows. So we'll be having the live happy hour show. We'll be playing some ballads this week on the show, which should be a lot of fun, getting our ballad on with a few acoustic tunes. Your Music Live is continuing to kick along with some great independent music. So if you've got a song you'd like to submit, feel free to do that. Just go to studiolivetoday.com/YML. And Garage Band Weekly will be continuing to chat about EQ. So we chatted briefly about EQ in this podcast. This week's GarageBand Weekly will be all about EQ. If you want to learn all of the information and get all the links and make sure that you're there for all the shows, a couple of things you can do. Go to studiolivetoday.com. All the links are there. And make sure you're on the mailing list at studiolivetoday.com/email. If you're watching the video version of this, then you can subscribe to the audio version. Just go to your podcast player of choice, search Studio Live Today, 3 words, and you'll find me, the little purple logo there for the Studio Live Today podcast. And if you're listening to the audio version, why not subscribe to the YouTube channel? Just go to studiolivetoday.com, follow the links through, and you can watch the show live, hang out with the folks as we record the show right here on the channel. That is going to do it for this episode of the Studio Live Today podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out. If you enjoyed it, leave us a rating if you're listening to the audio version. Leave a thumbs up if you're watching the video version. And until next time, please be kind to yourself, be kind to others, keep creating. I got to go listen to some Singles. Bye for now. How will I catch you alone? I don't want to need you. Should we play this? I've got my boombox over there. This is the post show, by the way. That was the podcast. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We're going to be hanging out here for another probably 15 to 20 minutes if there's continuing questions. So feel free to ask those. If I missed anything during the show, please go ahead and ask it now. I think I grabbed everything. Rita says maybe go for a surfer hang loose thumb and pinky. Oh, yeah. Isn't that one? That's the surfer, isn't it? Yeah, bruh, hang loose. See, that's probably got some other weird connotation. You know what I learned this week? I learned that cakewalk because I was watching a cricket game and a friend of mine messaged and said, What's your understanding of the definition of the word cakewalk?" And I'm like, "Well, cakewalk was the MIDI standard for digital audio workstations in the 90s, and then in the 2000s it was a professional DAW, and then in the 2010s it was purchased by BandLab, and now it's and he's like, "No, you're completely missing the point here. The word cakewalk," and I'm like, "Oh yeah." It just means like something really easy, like, "Oh, this game is such a cakewalk. They're going to win easily." And apparently, the word cakewalk is derived from the slaves. So black slaves used to have a cakewalk, which was where they would do a dance that was basically mimicking, like they would do like a fancy dance that would mimic the slave drivers sort of behind their back, which I actually think makes it extra cool. Like, I think it's even cooler that that's a cakewalk because, like, isn't that a cool homage? But I guess because it has connotations to slavery and things. Yeah, so who knew? I did not know that cakewalk. Yeah, I just thought it was easy. I'm the same with you, Barry. I thought it was easy. Thank you, Rena. I will enjoy the rest of my day. I every time I see Rena's name, I think, oh, I feel guilty because I haven't done what she's asked and got some ladies' t-shirts in the merch store. So I definitely need to do that, and it is on my list. It is on my to-do list of things to do. So thank you for being here and for constantly making me feel guilty. No, you don't make me feel guilty, but every time I see you, I'm like, oh no, because you asked for that like pre-Christmas, and I haven't got around to it yet. So it's on the list, Rena, trust me. Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Sebastian. Thanks for Phil. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, if you want to never miss another show, studiolivetoday.com/email. Get on the email mailing list. Friggsy says, interesting show, especially SJP being Darth Vader. Yeah. That's if I'm going to clip anything for the shorts clips, yeah, my Sarah Jessica Parker being Darth Vader instead of James Earl Jones would be weird. Yeah, 8-track. I thought, I don't know. See, we didn't have 8-track in Australia, so I didn't really know if that would get up there. Yeah, make more music. Even for a blind guy, an interface sounds easier. Yeah, I reckon so. I think an interface is just an easier way to go. Excuse me a moment. I'm just going to wander over here. You can still hear me, but it's just going to be blank. I want to see if my boombox is actually plugged in and working over here, and if I can work out how to play a tape. Oh, it's working. There we go. Well, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it all the way over there, but I'm just going to. You can probably hear me slotting the tape in there, hitting play. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Oh, here it is. All right. I just realized I can't play to that. But can you listen? Can you hear that? I'll get the microphone closer. Hang on. That's it playing the cassette. And the audio quality isn't that great either. All right. Enough of that. I'm going to get a copyright claim. I don't need a copyright claim for 4 seconds of a Heart single, because that would be kind of ridiculous. But yeah, I've got myself a little boombox over there, which is a bit of fun. Alrighty. Barry Glenn, what question? To get the upgraded LRC5, do we have to upgrade GarageBand? No, you don't at all. And I don't have my iPad plugged in, mate, but I'm going to go low. I'm going to go low tech and show you here. So there's all you need to do is make sure, and you've probably already got these. So you need to be on iOS or iPadOS 16.2, or the latest version, 16, iPadOS 16. And then if you just go in, they'll be there. So if you watch the video, they'll already be there. But what you will also need to do is, if you haven't ever enabled them, you need to go into your settings. I'll just bring it up here and I'll show you. You need to go into your settings and go to the GarageBand. So there's your regular settings here. You need to scroll down until you get to GarageBand. I think there it is, GarageBand. And then if you scroll over here, there is one that says Enable iOS Effect Plugins. See that one? The second from the bottom there, Enable iOS Effect Plugins. So make sure that one's selected. If that's not selected, they won't show up. So if you haven't selected, select that, then close GarageBand and reopen it. And when you jump into your GarageBand, so I don't have my proper thing set up here, then you'll just have access to them. So you'll be able to go into your effects here and edit and tap there, and then under Audio Unit Extensions at the very, very bottom, Whoop, missed the button. There you go. At the very, very bottom of this one, you have all these white ones. They used to be little orange logos. Now they're all white. So the one you want is the AU band EQ, because that makes sense, yeah? And then make sure it's on the right version. Oh, where's the view of it? Why is it not showing the right view? It's removed it. That's weird. Oh no. Have they just imagine if a day after I've released my video, they realise they made a mistake and they've removed them all? That's a bit disturbing. I can't find the button to switch it back over to its proper format. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, we're in trouble. Let's hope Pete didn't find what was considered bug, and now they've fixed the bug. Oh no, there we go. It's good. That was weird. So yeah, so there it is. You can actually get in there. That wouldn't surprise me. I would not put it past that to be the case. That they're like, oh no, we weren't ever. Those were for the Mac version. We were never supposed to have those cool visualizations in the iOS version. We have to fix it. No, hopefully not. All right. I think we've covered everything. Unless anyone has, I'll just do a quick scroll here. If anyone has, I was surprised too that I went to CDs, but yeah. So the weird thing is, I know that I have this feeling that all of us that hang out here are, folks in our 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, but there's a lot of folks that are in their 20s and 30s and even teens that actually watch and listen to the channel. So I guess a lot of those are actually nostalgic for the things that we think are like very recent, kind of mainstream. Yeah. LRC5 didn't work. Yeah, it's kind of not needed anymore because that band EQ is like LRC5, but probably better because it's native to GarageBand, native to iOS. It's probably a better option, in my humble opinion. Frixie says I got a Behringer monitor hub for Christmas. Also can be used for an interface, but has an extra you can plug a record player into and digitize it. A sample for your door. I haven't used it though. Yeah, that's really cool. The problem usually with record players and trying to digitize them is that they need a phono preamp because most record players don't actually have any amplification whatsoever. So to get a decent signal coming through, you need a phono preamp. So that's probably what this Behringer is doing, which is really cool. So you can actually do that. Because if you've ever bought those little cheap USB audio capture devices, the reason that they'll work for a tape player and they'll work for a video recorder or whatever, but you try to plug a record player in, is usually because you need a phono preamp in between. And a lot of record players don't have that built in. So there you go. Tip for young players. Cool. Well, all I've got really left to say is that the podcast will be out. Make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't already, you can do me a solid. You can head over to studiolivetoday.com/podcast. It'll drop you in here. You can listen in on any of the platforms. If you want to, you can check out the first episode. And even if you're not going to listen on audio, I shouldn't really tell you this. But feel free to leave a review. Even if you watch it over here on YouTube, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. That all helps. Every little bit helps because it means that more people can find the show. So please jump on over to studiolivetoday.com/podcast or just search it out anywhere you listen to podcasts. And everything else is at studiolivetoday.com. I will be back in almost exactly 2 days' time. In 48 hours from now will be the next live show, and that will be our happy hour. So we'll be playing some ballads for the happy hour there. It's the Behringer Xenix Control 2 if anyone's interested. Very cool. Nice one. All right. Thanks for being here. I know I've already said it at the end of that show, but be kind to yourself this week, folks. Be kind to others. Keep creating, keep doing your thing, and I'll see you next time around here on Studio Live Today. Thank you for being awesome. Bye for now. See ya.